This is a recording of an introduction on how to use the USAID Capacity Assessment Framework for land and resource governance sector. So USAID has developed a framework for assessing capacity, including changes in capacity of organizations and individuals, particularly focused on land tenure and resource governance sector. This tool provides a series of questions across three areas of interest: technical knowledge and skills of individuals or organizations, organizational effectiveness, and evidence of application of skills. These are considered Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Within the tool, which is an Excel-based workbook, there are a series of worksheets that collect data on knowledge, skills, on organizational effectiveness, and on the evidence of application. There's also a sheet for a pre-survey, an improvement plan for the organization or institution, a summary of institutions of improvements, and a tool so that you may assess the applicability of questions to your end goal. So what this tool does is allows you to collect information on the individuals and organizations before and after you are working with them through either a self-assessment process or an independent assessment. There's a series of questions. They're on a 5-point scale from no capacity to high capacity. Each of these workbooks, or this workbook, is designed to be used for one organization. Now, the key feature to this workbook is it recognizes that many of the topics in here and many of the questions may not be relevant to your particular partnership with an individual or an organization. So this tool allows you to select the relevance and applicability of any question through a number of yes/no questions at the beginning. And in large part, this is done through this pre-survey worksheet. So what I'm going to do is going to show you how, in some cases, by selecting elements of what you're working with an organization, it can turn on or off a column or a worksheet. Or in other cases, it can turn a question or a row to be red, which means you don't need to answer it. So let's look at a few of these. Look at the bottom for organizational effectiveness. Let's say you're not working with a full organization, you're just working with an individual. So you don't actually care to ask questions about a broader organization. So I'm going to select no, that we're not working with an organization. And you will see that in the bottom, the whole worksheet for organizational effectiveness gets turned off. Let's look also, for example, at self-assessments. So I'm going to move over to our first overwhelming sheet. And I note that there's a column for an independent assessment for pre-capacity and a self-assessment. Well, if we are just working with independent assessments, we can select no and select no again. And we'll see that those columns for self-assessment are gone. So now you can only have the independent assessment. So as you see, as you go through this pre-survey, you'll find that questions are turned on and off. This pre-survey also asks about which areas of land sector you're involved in. This is particularly important on evidence of application. Have you actually worked in responsible land investment, in land tenure and participatory planning, in gender responsive tenure? So let's say you are not working on anything related to participatory land use planning or responsible investment. You'll see then that when we go to that sheet, those questions are effectively turned off. Now, so this is sort of an interesting way that you're able to start to refine your questionnaire, which is largely done through this first pre-survey page. So let's now go back. Let's say we actually are working with an organization that has organizational effectiveness, and you'll see those questions have reemerged. Um, let's look at a very overwhelming question on applicability as well, potentially overwhelming. So what I want you just to think about is if you are not working again in land use planning or responsible investment, or you may not be working in certain areas of work. Let's say terminology is not very important to you, and you don't want to assess those questions. You can actually turn these off or sort of lower their relevance. And you can even have an M, which means maybe. It may be relevant. So as you're thinking with your partners about what capacities you're actually working on, you can think about, are you working on elements related to terminology, on data systems? Many organizations may not be working on data systems. You may not be working on gender, for example, although we hope that you are. So these actually will then flow over into subsequent questions unless you assess that, for example, we previously said that we're not working on anything related to terminology. So that actually was turned off here. Um, so, but it still allows you to collect information. So you can always, what I also want to show here is you are able to override. So if you actually do decide, well, we said it wasn't relevant, but I do want to answer the question, I can override that question. And likewise, if you come to a question or an area in the survey that you don't think is relevant, you can say you don't want to deal with it. So very customizable and really designed so that when you do your initial assessment, when you come back at the end to do a post-assessment, as you see here in column J and L, that you'll remember what you answered and why. So let's come back here and talk about a question like the indicator of using terminology correctly. Here you'll see that we have a series of guiding questions in section F that might help you understand where you're at. And note that in columns O and onwards, we have a description of what minimal capacity to strong capacity, or scores of 0 to 4, may come from. So these questions and guiding terms should help you as you're working. Note that the actual capacity framework does have a more textual place for carrying out these questions, and have put this in probably an easier to analyze approach that you can do on paper. Not analyze, but carry out in the field. So let's say again, we come to our assessment and we say that we had, well, maybe we'll give ourselves a little skills in each of these. Note that you should be taking notes along the way. Partner did not know what tenure meant, along with your scores. Here I am being lazy for the interest of time. So I'm just recording a few scores here, maybe an organizational effectiveness. Again, I turned it on. I made these all relevant. Maybe I'll make a few not relevant anymore. Say we are working in financial management, for example, and let's say we had a very low capacity. And let's say we had 0 customer service. So these are sort of part of our pre-assessment areas. Now, we would save this tool. We'd come back in a year or two, or after 6 months, however long we're working with the organization. And let's say we redo the assessment and we get some changes in some of our scores. And now what we can do is come and see what our improvement summary is, and it will start to tell us where our assessments are increased. So they're saying that the indicator is increased in 2 different places. Then, and you'll find that working in your final version. But basically, you have an improvement of what did change over the amount of time. Same thing with your description of how you had actually applied your skills. So you would ask the organization, for example, what did you do with the information related to sustainable land administration? And let's say they ran trainings with customary leaders on community land rights. So these will also, you'll want to manually insert the number of indicators where you're increasing. The final page of this that might help you think through your process is that as you do your first assessment, your pre-assessment, what you may want to do is come back and look at an improvement plan. So if you did see you scored very low on financial management and customer service, you may want to come to your improvement plan and choose to say that you'd like to do work on one particular topic or two. So maybe you're looking at tier 2, organizational effectiveness, and you can fill out this improvement plan to take note of anything you've done along the way. So again, the idea here is that from a pre-survey, where we're understanding what actually do we want to impact an organization with, how are we taking notes of that? Are we doing a self-assessment, independent assessment? And again, I didn't show earlier, but you can take any assumptions that you have on your capacity building work that really try to document what are you planning to do with this organization. It allows you to think about the various types of applicability or the types of skills you might be trying to train with an organization or work with an organization to build over time. And then it asks you to look at those with a series of guiding questions, some structured benchmarks for how to score those points, and then allows you to do that during a pre-assessment and a post-assessment. You're doing that with your knowledge, your skills, your organizational effectiveness, you're understanding how well you did and what you want to do by developing an improvement plan. And then at the end of your work, you're also seeing, did those organizations actually apply their knowledge, skills, and attitudes, or any of their organizational capacities? So basically, this tool acts as a record of what changed over that time. It provides a companion piece to this document on the assessment framework, really trying to make it come alive and allow you to have something that you can save and work with in the future.